Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra, and thank you all for joining. I am here now with Dominey Drew. So welcome, Dominique, to the Glow Up Girl podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. So why don't you start by telling the audience out there who you are and what you do?
Okay, great. So my name is Dominey Drew. I have practiced a kind of personal development work, a particular process since I was about 19 years old, and it has created in my life about 180 degrees of change on just about every level of my being. And I've been using it myself for almost 20 years. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I started a business where I now facilitate that change for other people. So it really addresses everything that therapy addresses on the mental and psychological, but also the physical. My physical body has changed a lot. We can go into that if you like. My emotional world, my mindset, the voices in my head are gone. It's really been incredibly transformational. And so now I'm incredibly passionate about teaching other people how to create the lives they want using the same process.
Awesome. Well, first, I love that you have used your own personal journey to help others. So let's talk about, because we will get into what you do today, but can you shed some light on who you were before you started this process, and how are you then implementing that into how you help others?
Oh man, girl, I was a mess. Like I was a mess. My life was fine. I don't have one of these stories like, I came from extreme poverty, or I had a particular hurdle, or I lost a leg or something where it's a more apparent difficulty to overcome. All of my shit was under the surface. I was just miserable. I was incredibly unhappy. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I felt really uncomfortable in my physical body. I carried weight that I couldn't get rid of. It was like sort of, beyond the natural balance of my body. I was like overweight for my body, and nothing I did moved it. I had negative voices in my head all the time, comparing me to others, finding me lacking, just really, just sort of cruel and useless. Right. I was anxious. I was depressed. I went on medication when I was young. I was suicidal by the time I was 17. And so it was really just feeling like I couldn't be myself. It was feeling like I was never good enough. I wouldn't accomplish anything. It was just like one thing after another. And so eventually it got to that point of mental health. And I had a suicide attempt when I was like 17. And I started going on some meds, exploring that. I ended up being on them for about 6 years, but then I used this process to get off of the need for them. So I didn't take them for, I'm not still taking them, which is nice. But they were a really useful tool for me at the time. And then I found this work when I was about 19. And I changed. I remember the first weekend I tried it, I changed more in this one weekend than I even realized was possible. And I just got quite addicted. I was like, oh my God, yes. And like any problem I threw at it, I ended up solving completely. So yeah, I just kept on going from there.
Well, I wrote down a couple of things as you were just speaking, and, you said that it wasn't something that, you had to overcome a big hurdle, but I mean, the issues that you dealt with are the issues that many of us deal with today. And people are suffering in silence because you feel like, okay, well, if I feel like I'm not comfortable in my own body and I want to, make a change and lose weight, well, that's just for me to do. Nobody needs to know that I'm, like I did it to myself, or, people have that speaking in in the background, telling them that, And then also you mentioned comparison. I mean, it is the everyday life that I think any of us who get on social media at any point in your day would be likely to experience.
Yeah.
It's just always looking, it's always there to see that somebody else has got it, what seemingly appears to look better, right? Then you have it. So, and then that feeling of not feeling like you're good enough. And those all are just so very like common ways that we allow the inner mean girl, the whoever's talking in our head to tell us that, you're just not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And the magic about these kinds of issues, one is, as you said, it is widespread. I mean, widespread, and it manifests as whatever you're struggling with. It's not the weight. The weight is not a problem. If you had a different mindset, you would do X, Y, and Z, and the weight would be taken care of. It's not that you can't make your business more successful. It's like the secrets to all these things are not secrets, right? Weight loss, success, enlightenment. The steps to enlightenment are online, right? They are in books. They have been written about for millennia. It is not, none of this is secret. And so what we tend to do, and you'll hear it in people's language, is I just need to figure out. So they're coming at it from their brain, right? Your mind has there's nothing that you can gain. Like your mind is circular, right? Unless you learn something new, what you do from the outside world, you bring something in. But if you're alone in a room, yes, you can maybe make a conclusion, but you're addressing something which is not a mental problem with the mental level. So you don't end up getting anywhere. It's not like you need to know more to be successful. The steps to an 8-figure business are online. Right. The problem is not that you don't know how to get there. And weight loss, of course, everywhere, right? I knew how to do it too. Didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Right. I wasn't successful until I started this particular business. I never made any money before that. Like and now I'm heading to the upper 6 figures. It's like all of these things, there are a few tweaks that we make in the mind. And when you do that, you're able to implement the knowledge and know-how that you already have. You're able to actually go to the gym with joy and excitement instead of sitting at home punishing yourself for not going and telling yourself that you should, and the person online who went to the gym is better, right?
That is so funny, because that is what you will hear people say is, well, I should have worked out today. I was going to work out today, but then I didn't feel like working out. And then they spend the rest of the time going, I don't know how I'm ever going to lose weight because I didn't work out. And I think, what you're saying is so important, because it's your mindset. Yeah. And like you said, all the tips and tools to actually accomplish something is there. It's all about like, when are you going to flip that switch in your own head to say that, okay, now I'm ready to do X and I'm going to commit to doing it. Because, like you mentioned about weight loss. Okay. So I always use, I can only use myself as an example, but, okay. So when we all started working from home and basically sort of living in our houses over since 2020, the first year, okay, there was the COVID pounds that came, right? And then last year, I was like, oh yeah, I was working out, but I wasn't eating right. And so that's already like canceling itself, all the Uber Eats meals and DoorDash, and they were just like stacking up. And then, I got to a place where I realized, okay, I actually am shaming and guilting. I feel shame and guilt because I allowed myself to gain weight. And it was like, the year before, like I lost a lot of weight, and I was like, oh, so I feel shame because I allowed for myself to do this. But then that's when like the grace factor kicked in, and it was like, I hear you, girl. Like you did gain the weight and you do need to lose it. But it's also been hard to exist over the last few years. So you've got to allow for yourself to have, have that grace, but then get back on, the horse and start back riding. And so, in December, it's just like my mind, like it just was like, okay, yep, I'm back. I'm back to the protein shake in the morning after workout, just, this meal at lunch and this meal at dinner, and having like one day on the weekend where I say, oh yeah, well, I'd like to have a cheeseburger today.
Yeah.
And it's so easy, like once you do it, because you, like you said, once you start something and you start to immediately see the results.
Yes. And it's also like really fast. Yeah. Like just you said, you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to do this. I mean, if you think about what you just described, it's like we all see this in a certain way. Let's say last week on your podcast, you have somebody who's in a weight loss specialist, and they go, everybody deals with this not wanting to go to the gym, which is a generalization. That's not true, but let's say that they tend to do that. So that everybody struggles with this. And so, here's what you need to do. You need to set a discipline schedule for yourself, right? Or you need to, reward and whatever. They're working with psychology, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the shape of that, what they're doing is they're taking a difficulty and they're finding ways to break through it. And you find that everywhere on the internet, right? Here's a tip and trick if you're finding yourself not motivated in success, right? In your business, and you need to okay, cool. Everybody's about going through the difficulty. Why don't we stop and look at what's causing the difficulty in the first place? Mm-hmm. Not everybody has a hard time going to the gym. Many people do. I did, but I don't anymore. That's interesting. Yeah. I was not like, one of those people, but I fucking am now. Now it's easy. I love it because I love this feeling. I don't always do it, but I do it enough, right? So it's like, so nobody stops and goes, gee, I wonder, because I know the me I am conscious of knows that I feel better when I do that, and I want the results of that, and yet I'm not doing it. That is self-sabotage, right? Yes. Self-sabotage is the source, and I mean this very, very literally, of every single problem a person has in their life. Actually, it doesn't look that way. That might sound like a crazy thing. Oh, I was just bored. I'm just an anxious person. Anxiety is fascinating me lately because people don't see it as a problem. They see it as a fact. Oh, well, I'm just anxious. Oh, girl, me too. I hear you. Right? We ladies, we like to collude a little bit. We're like, oh yeah, I got you. I've had that. Yep, I know. You're God, and it's meant well. It's like, yes, I'm trying to, but what you're really doing is like accepting that you are unhappy instead of being like, oh, you're feeling anxious. What can I do to help you change that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a way in which, with anxiety in particular, and I had this happen with a client of mine who had like a panic attack on my floor. She was a friend of mine, and I ended up working together. And she had this spirit. She's like, leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. Like, just, I've done this for years and years, just, and I was like, okay. And I sat back and, and then afterwards we were talking about it. And I said, so what are you afraid of in those moments? And she looks at me and she goes, in 13 years of therapy, nobody's ever asked me that question.
Interesting.
It's like, we go, oh, you're anxious. Okay. Well, in what situations are you anxious? Here, take this medication. Again, I'm not anti-meds, tool, but not solution, right? What are you afraid of? Anxiety is fear. You're scared. That's cool. We're all scared. Cool. What are you scared of? Like that should be the first, that's just the first question. Should be arguably the only question. Because once we found that out, once it's conscious, right? Once you know why you're not going to the gym despite wanting to, it's totally fixable. And that's why I say that everything comes down to that self-sabotage.
Exactly. Yep. Because you're right. Because I think you hear a lot of times just using the same gym analogy, like, oh yeah, well, I don't like to work out around other people. Okay, fine. Then get an app and work out at home. But it's, you acknowledge the why you don't want to do something.
Yes.
And like you said, if you get to the root cause, then you can fix it. So, I mean, okay, so we've got these scenarios of self-sabotage, everywhere. Why do you think that is why do you think people do that as opposed to trying to get to a root cause of why something is happening.
So, and this is it. And the key word that you're using is root cause. Okay. So the example that you just gave, oh, why don't you go to the gym? I don't like working out around people. So you could say, so you found a solution for it. Great. Work out at home. That's great too. What I would do is be like, stop for just a second. Mm-hmm. Why don't you like working out around people? Mm-hmm. What does that bring up for you? Because it's not like you can't.
Right. Yeah.
And if this is what you say is between you and what you want, obviously it's not because you found another solution, right? Immediately you're like, sure, work out at home. Like, fix it already.
But you're right. You do have, because you may never be able to go work out in front of people, even if they lose, even if it's like, oh, I've lost weight, but there's something else that you need to solve. Yes. The why you can't, because you'll never be comfortable working out in front of people.
Or not till you figure out what the problem is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Same with anxiety. It's not your fault that you're anxious. There's a fear response. Cool.
Right.
Let's see what's causing the fear response. Maybe nothing will change at all. But boy, if I were spending all day afraid of something, I would sure like to know what that is. And we try to, again, fix it with the brain. We can't solve a problem we can't define.
Right.
We're looking for solutions. We don't actually know what the problem is. If you think the problem is, I don't like working out around people, then there are different solutions to it. But if that's not really the problem, problem is I'm afraid of letting go, right? That's what shifted for me when I started losing all that weight. I was holding on to shit, right? All the time. I was holding on, taking responsibility for other people's shit, like all this stuff, And so that manifested literally, quite literally, physically as weight. So when I shifted that in the work, it was the process work that I teach shift that caused me to lose the weight, not working out. Although once that cleared, then suddenly working out became really fun. That's what shifted. That's why I like going to the gym now. Like, it's enjoyable in the days when you can, back when you could. And so the shift that needs to be made is internal. Right. So some person can come to me. I worked for a long time with dating and relationships, and they would come to me and say, okay, I've got this relationship with my partner, but my partner won't come and see you. I go, great. We don't need them to. Actually, because every dynamic, right, whether it's a fabulous dynamic or it's a super distorted, abusive dynamic, it takes two people. Okay. In order for there to be an overpowering dynamic, for example, there has to be someone to overpower and someone to allow themselves to be overpowered. Right. Now, obviously that can get quite complex, but it comes down to when if you shift what's going on in you, right? Let's say you've got somebody who overpowers you a little bit in your relationship, and you're like, oh, well, if I stand up to people, then blank will happen because that's what happened when I was a kid. And so subconsciously you might believe that and believe that you can't, right? If you shift that and you go, actually, I don't really love it when you talk to me like that, right? If you don't play the game shifts.
Yeah.
And you can see that with a person more easily, but you can also see it with the gym. Your relationship with the gym will change when you change your mind about the gym. Right. And so it's not, because we can get also into these sort of like, I believe this. And like, that's the whole, and that will change everything. It's deeper than that. It's a way of being, right? You changed your way of being when you decided, nope, actually, shakes do sound good again. I think I'm going to do that. Right. And you were a different way. It's not a way of thinking. It changes the way you think, but it's actually deeper. That's where the real change, that's where the source problems lie. Yeah.
I was just over here writing down some of these notes. So let's go into a little bit more on the relationship side. Sure. Because that is interesting. And I do think that I love that you said, like, as long as you're playing the game, you will always sort of be in the same scenario, right? Or this almost like tit for tat, I like to call it. And I'm one-upping you. But it's like, if you make an effort to shift the way you respond to something that someone does, your partner, your spouse, your significant other, whomever, if you shift your response to it, then at some point they have to realize that, oh, that doesn't work that doesn't
Yes.
work. Or maybe, like you said, I do love this. And this is definitely something like I practice with my husband is when something, happens and I go, well, actually, I don't like when you come in and do X.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so this is funny because we actually had this conversation this week because we're up, and I usually try to go upstairs to a little bit earlier so that he has time. So like he likes to watch the news at night. He can watch the news. I'm going upstairs because I want to like watch something funny. I want to like relax, get my mind, at ease. And so normally like he comes in and he usually will come in where there's like about 5 minutes left in the show. And I am a person, I love to watch like Adult Swim.
Oh my God, I love Adult Swim.
So I'm generally like watching a cartoon that, and when he comes in and he's like, oh my God, I mean, like I can't, you're like always watching those cartoons, like nobody wants to see those cartoons. I'm like, mm-mm.
Yeah, I do, because here I am.
And so for a while, I would say something smart back and then I keep watching it. And then like this week I said, you know what? I said, so let me tell you this. So I paused. I said, let me tell you, I don't like when you come up here and you make fun of something that I enjoy watching. I said, because one, you're coming up and it's 11:20. And so that the show is only 30 minutes. It's going to be gone off like in like maybe 7 minutes. And then I'm going to then concede and give you the remote control. And I'm going to get ready to like try and go to sleep. I said, but the time that you spend grumbling, mumbling, making noise to get in the bed, you're being rude and disrespectful to me because I am watching TV. I left so that you could watch what you wanted to watch. And so then I think then like it finally like clicked in his head because, after that, like he came up and he did not make one comment. He came in, put his stuff down on his side of the bed and got in the bed. And then once the show was over, then I said, oh, do you want to watch so-and-so? Like I found something that we both like to watch together. And I'm like, okay. All right, girl. I was like, high five.
And all it took was breaking the dynamic.
Yes.
Just being like, actually, I want to stop doing what we're doing.
Yes.
One of the things when people will sort of stand up in their power, when they've had a hard time standing in their power, or they recognize they've been in that little negative dynamic, like when you were smart back and then you're playing the game, right? Mm-hmm. So he likes that, or that feeds whatever, anyway, what's happening. And so then it continues. So, and then they'll be like, oh, well, in order to break this dynamic, because it's been going on for so long, or whatever the story is that they're carrying in their mind about it, I have to like be forceful, I hate it when you do all these things, and like, it actually doesn't require that. It just requires no, thank you. I don't like this.
Exactly.
Thank you for trying. No, thank you. No.
So listen to us, people. We are telling you, don't play the game.
Don't play the game and don't react so hard. Don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. Just no. Like your boundary can be like very, flexible and firm. It can just be,
right.
A healthy, no, thank you.
And what have you seen? Like what experiences of self, how do you see self-sabotage happening in relationships most often?
Oh man, so many ways. So many ways. Well, okay, so let's continue with what we're doing. So if you were to, I'll base it on yours, but change it a little bit. So let's say that dynamic really bothered you more than it did, and you kind of fed into it for a long time. And then, you hear Dominique on the podcast and you're like, I don't need to stand for that anymore. I'm not going to do this. And you go, but you just like, let him have it. Right. And you're like, you are a terrible husband because you're whatever, or, this, and you're coming. So you're coming with all this force. Again, let's stop and look at the situation. So he's doing something you have said yes to this entire time. Right. Saying yes means more, please. So when you take that, he throws you a little shade and you take that shade and you playfully throw it back, we're in a game, right? Nothing wrong with that. Just know that you're doing it, right?
Yes.
My ex and I used to give each other shit all the time. Like we loved it. That was our dynamic. We found the sort of loving talk to be very sort of sappy, and he'd be like, whatever, I don't even care about you. And I'd be like, shut up, you love me. It was like that type of fun. And it was great. It was like super, we adored each other. And so it doesn't matter what your dynamic looks like. It matters how it makes you feel. And if you're in a relationship or multiple relationships over a long time, that can change. So also leaving space, right, for that. So if you come back with a lot of frustration and anger, well, that frustration and anger isn't really, in a way, it's not really about him. It's about you. First of all, it's not exactly fair because you've said yes this whole time. He has followed your signals, and now you're saying no. So to say no with a smackdown, then it's just like, can't believe you always done this shit. And he's like, you mean the shit that you enjoyed yesterday? Like, what are you talking about? Right. So you're reacting, and your anger is valid, but it's misdirected. Your anger is not about him. He's been giving you the dynamic you've literally asked him for this whole time. It's great.
You should be. It's really you.
Really, it's always you. Even when it looks very much like it's somebody else, it's always you. And so when you, which is really the best news I could possibly give anybody on the planet, because if your issue really were him, you would be powerless to fix it. Right? Then you would be an actual victim, which just about no one is really, if you pull the layers back down enough, right? Which most people don't. And so they sort of ascribe to victimhood, and that it feels better. Let's be real, right? Except that you can't solve your problem and you're stuck. And so when you step into that empowered place of like, I don't think I like this anymore, actually. It's kind of like, I feel blech now. He goes, okay, now if he's like, fuck you, we're going to keep the dynamic anyway. Okay, now we've got a different problem, right? But like for the most part, like it's not, for most relationships, that's not the thing.
Yeah. No, I think that is good advice, because I think a lot of times people, you may not think about that is the signal that you've been giving. That, oh yes, please, this is good. I like this. Like you said, more please. and then there's that moment, where you like evolve, you change, and you want to create space for a different type of relationship or interaction, right? Yes. And like you said, the other person may not know, like the other person's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait.
So explain yourself. Yeah. Speak your truth. Give them a minute.
Exactly. Other person's like, wait, we're not playing this game.
Yeah. That was fun. Is that fun for you anymore? Oh, all right.
Exactly. And so, and that's why, like I thought about it and just said, you know what? I'm just going to say like, nope, I don't like that because it feels like this. Yes. It makes me feel this way when you do X. Yes. So, as opposed to being like, well, you a horrible person.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. When you come in here at night, I'm like, ugh.
Or worse, you don't say anything, but you just start feeling a different way about him. And then the next time maybe he wants to have sex, you're like, I don't really want to have sex because I don't like you as much as I did before because all these things are happening. And he doesn't know, ladies. Ladies. He doesn't know unless you vocalize. You must, and that requires us standing in our goddamn power. And so you must step into yourself. This is your life. You are designing it right now. How do you want to go? Left or right? Doesn't matter. Nobody else cares. You are a grown-up.
Right.
You can make your life what you want. And P.S. you have. This is it. By definition, you are looking at it right now. So if there's anything you want to change,
there is still plenty of time and opportunity and space for you to change the direction that you're going.
If you own how you got there. Because if you see it as everything else, then life just ended up this way.
Nope, it didn't. It
really didn't. No.
Well, I think there's another thing that you just, you mentioned, standing in your power. And I think that, that also comes with being like your authentic self.
Yes.
And so how, because a lot of people may not have been able to be their authentic self. And some people may be in relationships that they've been in for a long period of time. And, as they have grown and started to gain that power, and now they're trying to be truly the authentic person who they are. Woo. So, okay, let's do two parts to that. Okay. So you've got one for people who are single, and maybe out there dating. How do you bring that your authentic self to that dating, situation? And then second part to that is you've got people, like I said, who are already in relationships, because a lot of times, people are in relationships, they're young, and then they sort of grow up together. And then that person starts to change and walk more in their authenticity. So let's discuss.
Yes, I love it. So the answer to both is the same, because either dynamic comes from you giving yourself permission to be who you are. That is like one of the great secrets to life. That's also really not a secret. Humans are meant to lead joyful lives. Actually. Yeah. Yep. All of the compromising we do and all of the really awesome, terrible reasons why we give ourselves that we can't do what we want to do. It's like life is a process of learning the extent to which those are just total bullshit. Right? You want to make your parents happy. You can't make your parents happy. Let me just go ahead and just blow that one wide open right now. Okay. You can't make anybody happy. Yeah. Right. I can't make you happy. I could do something which might lead to your happy. There's correlation there, but not causation. Right. Nobody can make me feel anything. This is a great misconception of the world right now. Right. Because so you and I get in a relationship and suddenly I start being kind of just like, I hate that you go out all the time, Kyra. Like, I really, I wish that you, really stayed home with me. And you're like, oh, I guess I really ought to stay home. So now it's your responsibility. Like, my happiness is your responsibility. That's how I'm holding that in that moment. You're only happy when I stay home. Yeah, I'm only happy when you stay home. Hang out with me. Right? That's my problem, not yours. And by the way, you staying home does not solve my problem. My problem is that for some reason, and you and I don't know what it is, I'm not happy when you go out. That's something I need to go work on in my life. You need to keep going out as much as brings you joy. That's not disrespectful. I think we would see that as disrespectful. Oh, when I go out, it makes this. No. If you, because it's transferring the problem to the wrong center. Yes, if I stay home all the time, you might not feel that negative thing, but it's not my job to keep you from feeling negative things. That's going to happen in life. Yeah. I could be the world's ideal partner. COVID's still going to happen. Boy, that's a bummer. Shit happens. That's not to be avoided in life, right? Pain or discomfort is not to be avoided. What we tend to do, and this is something that you'll find in the Eastern traditions, is they'll create a distinction between pain and suffering. Okay. Your dog, runs away and gets hit by a bus. That is painful. Right. You lose a sister to cancer. That is painful. Okay. You spend your life regretting that you didn't spend more time with your sister. That's suffering. Okay. You've got a partner who steps on your toes around cartoons. That's painful. You hold back saying anything because whatever statement you're saying, confrontation means this, or if I do this, he won't love me, or, all the things that are in the subconscious. That's what my work brings forward, because you don't even know what you believe most of the time. You just think you're seeing the same world as I am, and you're not, right? You're seeing a different world than I am. And so because of that statement, you go, oh, don't say anything, and you suffer. When we don't stand in our power, we suffer. When we force ourselves to overpower, we suffer. That goes either way. Right. So you, holding back from your truth or trying to force. I was quite forceful for a lot of my life. I was like an extrovert, and I distorted that, defensively. I made that into a defense of like, love me, let's hang out, I want you to be home, like whatever. Like but it was coming with force, which was off-putting because it's a defense. Point is to push people away. So, all of this to say, it's about your only job in life. And it's amazing. I'm talking, success, happiness in relationships, fulfillment in life, raising your children well. Everything comes down to this: the things that light you up in life. That is your inner guidance system saying that's the path. It's not outside of you. There's nothing outside of you in your experience. Those voices we were talking about earlier, that's you kind of split off from yourself, talking to yourself, right? There's a distortion there. We call that distortion, right? Everybody does this on some level, distortion on some level. But if you follow your joy, okay, not necessarily your addiction or your compulsion, but genuine, authentic joy, that's your authentic self right there. That's how you find your authentic self. What lights you up in life? Immediately, effortlessly, with no story. Oh, I'm a dentist. Do you love dentistry? Well, it really made a lot of sense because my dad's a da-da-da-da-da. Nope, I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah, that's not, yeah.
Yeah, if you're not like, oh my God, dentistry. It is
more teeth.
The best. I love teeth. Give me all the teeth. This is, my friends come over and I'm like, what are you flossing with? Like, what are Yeah. That's what I do with my friends. They come over, right?
Exactly. We're talking teeth, just so you know.
Just so you know. I'm curious about, maybe talking about your boyfriend. I'm totally listening, but also like, what are you brushing with? Because
right.
You love it, right? So you're naturally going that direction. That's your authentic self. And to follow that creates a very different life. I'm not saying there won't be sacrifices. You might need to let go of some things that you've maybe built for a long time, because people go on paths that aren't their own for decades and decades.
Yes.
You're creating your life the way you want it, which means you can change it.
Yes. I love that. Very good advice. All right. So now you have given out so much great advice. What I'd like for you to tell us is, how can people work with you?
Absolutely. So I have a number of different ways, coaching programs that people can join. You can read about them on my website, which is just my full name, DominiqueDrew.com. What I would really recommend people do is, I have a free course that people can that just gives you, all of my students will master the skills that are in it. So it's super rich. It's got a few of my podcast episodes that talk about how to recognize your defenses and fix them, right? So all of this, everything we've spoken today is 100% fixable. And I really want people to sort of walk away with that. And that's not coming from like theory or my personal opinion, but having done it for people for, and myself for 20 years. So definitely check out that free course. There's a way that you can schedule a free call with me if you're interested in working with me from there. But that's a really good free resource in my podcast as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. All right. So before we get ready to wrap up here, I like to do a little 3 things with Dominique. Helps us to dig a little bit deeper and get to know you better. I always like to ask these questions. How do you start the day?
How do I start the day? So I get up, I have a little miniature dachshund who sleeps with me in the bed. So first I get my face licked. That's excellent for the pores, it's really great. And then I will meditate. I have, there's a man named Sadhguru who has wonderful meditations. And I did a program with him. So I will meditate for a while. Every few days I will work out. I feel so good when I do that. And then I dive into work. That's my fave. Yep.
Awesome. What is a song or songs that is in your playlist when you go to the gym? What are you listening to?
Ooh, I like that. So I really like electronic music, and there's a German DJ actually called the Fat Rat who does this sort of very like poppy, upbeat electronic music, and I love it, and I will dance around the house to it relatively often.
Awesome. Awesome. I like it. And how do you end the day?
I end the day also with puppy dog. I will tend to be, at the moment I'm traveling with my mother, so it's more like watching British baking show with my mother. But winding down, yeah, usually in bed with a book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So if for anyone out there listening, watching this episode today, what 2 to 3 things would you like to leave them with from our discussion today?
So mostly I want people to know that all of the difficulties that they're experiencing are fixable. It's very important that, because that can sound quite extreme or ridiculous, it is 100% true. I know this to be so. I have found it in myself and many, many others. That the reason it's fixable is because they are contributing to keeping it going without realizing it. And that it's not your fault for doing so. You're doing so unconsciously, and becoming conscious of why you're doing so is an absolute game changer. So there is nothing, there is no problem that I have done this work on that it has not fixed, including, as I said, physical things with my body and my mindset. You know, at some point, the voices in my head were just gone. Like, I didn't even know that was possible. There's no conversation anymore in my brain. And so I'm very unified. I'm very much myself. I'm very much able to just be myself. And that is 100% possible for everybody. There's nothing special about me whatsoever, other than I just kept going. I didn't stop. I was like, yep, let's fix this problem. Now this one. And I've gotten to where I am.
Awesome. Great advice. And last, what is next for you, Dominique?
So I'm in an interesting transition period, which seems to be relatively common right now, where I don't live anywhere. I am living a digital nomad life. My mother lives on a farm in the East Coast of the United States, and she wanted to see British Columbia. So I drove her across the country, and we're in Vancouver at the moment. And then I'm going to drive her home in a few weeks, and I think I'm going to go live in Europe for a while.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Just live your life, right?
Yes. Here I am following my joy.
There you go. Well, Dominique, thank you so much for stopping in and spending some time with me today. This has been a great conversation, and I want you to know that you always have a place to come back and share this great advice that you've given us today in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been great being here.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.